back to another episode of the Institute Up Close. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with us, as always, is the Superior of the Institute, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
We're going to be tackling the Pastoral Directory today. Now, this has more than 30 paragraphs, so we can't go through it all in one go. We're going to do it in 3 parts, and today we're just going to cover up through to the end of the first part, so paragraph 8. If you'd like, you can always read the directories that we're talking about at Roman Catholic Institute or rcinstitute.org. So I'll start with the general principles for the administration of sacraments. The administration of the sacraments requires not only valid ordination, but jurisdiction as well. Sacramental jurisdiction is sought and obtained in ordinary times from the bishop of the diocese. However, in these times of the vacancy of the episcopal sees owing to the promotion of heresy, jurisdiction to distribute the sacraments comes from the principle of epea, which is the favorable interpretation of the will of the lawmaker in the absence of the lawmaker. This principle therefore demands 2 things that it can be validly cited and used for sacramental jurisdiction. Number 1, the absence of the lawmaker, and 2, a reasonable cause by which to presume the permission of the absent lawmaker. If either of these conditions should be lacking, then epea could not be used for sacramental jurisdiction. The priests of the Institute hold that both of these conditions of epea are present, for they hold for certain that the Vatican II hierarchy is a false hierarchy and does not have the power to teach, rule, and sanctify the Church. Therefore, the legislator of sacramental jurisdiction is absent. They hold as well that those who repudiate Vatican II and the Vatican II hierarchy would be deprived of sacraments if the priests of the Institute fail to provide them. Therefore, the reasonable cause exists to presume that the legislator, Christ the head of the Church, and a true pope or true local bishop would desire that he distribute the sacraments. Consequently, the Institute holds that its priests may administer sacraments legitimately only to those who have repudiated the Vatican II religion. It is not in accordance with reason that a priest who is using epea to justify his sacramental jurisdiction distributes sacraments to those who accept the authority of the Novus Ordo hierarchy. I'm just going to stop here, Your Excellency, because I always think of your quote, if Bergoglio is your pope, you can go to him for your sacraments.
Not only you can, you must. You must. Yes, we're often criticized for refusing sacraments to people. And I want to make clear here that we're not saying that they're public sinners. We're not saying that they're heretics or anything like that, or outside of the church. We're just saying that it doesn't make any sense from the point of view of epikeia that they come to us. In other words, we need a justification to give sacraments in these times in an extraordinary manner. So if you feel justified in going to the new Mass or going to an unicum Mass, there is no reason for you to approach us. So you cannot reasonably approach us. Remember, epikeia has to be reasonable. And we have no reasonable cause to give you sacraments. So that, because if you feel that the Pope is in Rome and that's Francis, you should be going to a priest who is in communion with Francis. And that isn't even SSPX, because for communion you need 2. Both sides have to agree. So you should be going to the new Mass if you say that man is the Pope. So that's the reason, is that you have no business being here. We have no business giving you the sacrament. That's the reason for it. That because we have to be faithful to that principle of epikeia in order to presume a sacramental jurisdiction, the license to give sacraments.
Well, and I don't think there's a lot of these people, Your Excellency, but there are some people who just float around to different Latin masses because it's all Latin Mass. I just need the sacraments. I don't want to get involved in the politics of what Father says about this and that.
Right. No,
I'm just
people like that.
I'm just here for the Mass. I had thought that there was a minority of people, but you say there's quite a few.
There's quite a few. I need the Mass. You see, it's that I. It's not. This is a worship of God, and it has to be in accordance with all the principles of the Catholic faith. They don't. I need the Mass. I need it like I need a meal or something like that.
Right.
Or something for me. You see, so it's all backwards. You go to Mass, as Bishop Dolan always said, to please God, not to please yourself.
All ecclesiological principles require that one may approach for sacraments only those priests who are authorized by the true hierarchy of the Catholic Church. Therefore, if someone recognizes the Vatican II, quote, Pope and, quote, bishops as the true Catholic hierarchy, then these same ecclesiological principles logically require the priests of the institute to refuse sacraments to them. For there is no reasonable cause present to distribute sacraments by epea to those who logically should be going to the Vatican II hierarchy for sacraments. Furthermore, there is no reasonable cause for those who adhere to the Vatican II hierarchy to approach a priest for sacraments who holds that the legislator, the local bishop, is absent, owing to the promulgation of heresy. In other words, neither Christ nor the Church can authorize at the same time both the Novus Ordo clergy and the traditionalist clergy to distribute sacraments. Only one of these distributes legitimately. The other distributes illegitimately. Only one distributes as having jurisdiction from the true hierarchy of the Catholic Church. The other distributes without authorization and jurisdiction from the true hierarchy of the Catholic Church. I think that's an excellent formulation, Your Excellency. It's a question of, well, where is the Church?
Yes, it comes down to that. Where is the Church? What is Vatican II? Are these people heretics or not? Do they promulgate heresy or not? It all is combined in there. It's all bundled up in there. You see, that's why we have that policy.
And how is that policy implemented day to day? I mean, you may not know that this person also goes to Mass somewhere else or goes to the Novus Ordo potentially.
Well, we don't know. The general rule is that if someone presents him or herself piously at the communion rail, you give them Holy Communion. The only reason you wouldn't would be if they are well known to be invalidly married, for example, or if they are improperly dressed, seriously, something like that, public scandal, anything like that. You would not. It's rare that you would refuse somebody. But if I know that somebody is going back and forth between Unicum and ourselves, or worse even,
Novus
Ordo and ourselves, I would call them aside. And I would say, you have to decide one way or the other for the very principles that are stated there. I mean, if Novus Ordo is correct, then we are wrong. If we are right, then Novus Ordo is wrong. We can't both be right about this. We are on opposite sides, you see, and you must make a choice.
And what do you find is normally the outcome of these conversations?
Most understand, others do not. They just go away and do whatever they please. But our job is to respect the truth and be consistent with the truth. And really, I don't care what they do.
I'm so surprised, Your Excellency.
I know it's not unlike me to be so hard.
Right. Reason and logic always demand consistency. Inconsistency is a sure sign of error. Whatever act is not in accordance with reason, furthermore, is a sin. The refusal of sacraments to adherence to the Vatican II hierarchy, therefore, must not be construed as an accusation of public sin or of public heresy or any other delict, but simply as a moral consequence of their recognition of the false Vatican II hierarchy as the true Catholic hierarchy. Again, if Bergoglio is your pope, let's go blow up balloons together.
Yes, the dancing girls and everything else.
The epistle babes.
Yes.
To administer sacraments to them would be contrary to reason and would therefore eliminate one of the necessary conditions of epikeia, which would in turn ruin the foundation of the priest's jurisdiction in administering the sacraments to such persons. I think it's a very clear... Without this, the pastoral applications don't make any sense. So people have to understand epikeia is everything in this situation.
Epikeia is king, as I always say. In this situation, in the deprivation of authority of the church, we are left with that moral principle. But we have to make sure that we are reasonable. Those are the two ingredients. The authority must be absent, and your judgment must be reasonable. I always compare it to the monk who is in the bookstore and can't check with his superior if he can buy something. That's buy a book that he really needs, and he could use epikeia and buy it. When he goes home, he sees a yellow Ferrari in the showroom. And can I buy that? Of course not. It is against reason. You see, so you can't use it just any way whatsoever. It's not a free for all. So. There's always a transportation.
Yes, I know. I knew it was going to be a Lambo or a Ferrari. But
yeah,
you use
yellow
that
Ferrari.
Yellow Ferrari. It's such an image.
The Dominican novice. I always use that in class. The Dominican novice will use the yellow Ferrari.
Number 1, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who deny either the baptism of blood or the baptism of desire, or to those who promote these ideas. I suppose I should also add, and who leave pamphlets in the back of the church to these points.
Yes, they're very vocal about what they think. Yeah.
And again, how those discussions are, you pull someone aside and
Yes, you try to correct them. Usually they are incorrigible in my experience. I don't think I've ever succeeded
well, you have a limited experience here. It's only about 50 years or so.
a little
So
short of 50, 48 and a half
40,
right now.
we're heading towards 50.
Yeah.
So
And so I don't think I have ever succeeded in converting a Feeneyite.
Number 2, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who frequent the Novus Ordo Mass unless they first manifest an intention of repudiating Vatican II and its reforms. So we've spoken about that before. So someone who's coming from the Novus Ordo, what they would need to do is firstly stop attending the Novus Ordo.
Yes.
And then probably catechism and
Yes,
checking in on
yes.
their baptisms, confirmation.
Yes, they have to be all checked out with regard to what they know. They have to at least know the rudiments of the Catholic faith. They have to believe. And also their baptisms may be invalid. Their confirmations are most probably invalid. They have to be fixed up, so to speak.
Number 3, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who are invalidly married or who are living as husband and wife after having received marriage annulments from the Novus Ordo, the Society of St. Pius X, or any other person or entity. And I think the question here, Your Excellency, is do you look at people's situations,
Oh, yes.
but you're not able to give them some kind of pronouncement?
Do you mean an annulment?
Right.
No, absolutely not. No.
Because there are some groups, there are some people who do this.
No, only the authority of the Catholic Church can pronounce an annulment. It is a judicial act on the part of the Catholic Church. And one of the reasons for that is that you have to be married in all of the dioceses of the world. In other words, Bishop Sanborn said we're not married. Well, that, and as we used to say in New York, and 15 cents will get you on the subway. In other words, I can't, then you go to another priest and he says, well, I don't agree with Bishop Sanborn, and then you're not married.
Right.
Marriage by its very nature is social and universal. You're married everywhere. And so the church must intervene with its judicial process there to declare it null or still valid, you see. So we have no jurisdiction whatsoever we have no jurisdiction, period. I mean, ecclesiastical jurisdiction, none, zero. Right. So, but especially in something like that, which requires a judge and lawyers, et cetera, and an official judgment from the church, not somebody's opinion or a group of priests who think that maybe you're not married or something like that. That is worth nothing. And I think the priests that do that I think they're guilty of approving of adultery, because these people can therefore go and find somebody else to marry and get married in their chapels, and they are blessing adultery and cooperators in adultery. I think it's awful.
I think what's also tragic on that front, Your Excellency, is both you and Father Cicada have told me over the years that people who've come to you with particular cases, you've looked at them and said, it looks like you all you are not eligible to be with each other.
Well,
and they go away sad. They've found the traditional mass, they've found your writings or Father Cicada's writings, but when you tell them the reality of the situation, they disappear.
Yes. They when people get married a second time, it's almost like an eternal death sentence. I mean, illegitimately married a second time. For them to pull out of that and to repudiate this spouse that has, and usually the second spouse is better than the first spouse. The second marriage is better than the first one because they're more mature. To repudiate that spouse and say, you're not my true wife or you're not my true husband is so difficult that they just may well go to hell because of their adultery. They understand that they're not really married, but they can't break it. It's very serious to do that.
And that's why I say I think it's sad, because they're being given the grace, that grace. They came to you, they talked to you about it, and sometimes both spouses are interested.
Yes.
Your Excellency, what's the situation?
Yes.
You tell them, and then they go away.
They go away. Yes, I've seen that many, many times. Other times, truly, somebody married in the Catholic Church will come to you and they give you a case, and you are certain that they qualify for an annulment.
However,
I don't have the power to give it. See, so they must, in that case, you have to tell them they must live as brother and sister because, in fact, they are not really married, but legally they are. See?
It's a difficult time.
No, it's all to be laid at the feet of John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, and all of these horrid, horrid people who have changed the church. Horrid devils who have changed the church and leading people into this tremendous mess that we have today.
Or as they're referred to by some people, Saint John the 23rd,
Yes, all
Saint
of
Paul
those
the
people.
6th,
I mean, they
Saint
have,
JP2.
the church was in beautiful condition in 1958, and they blew it up. It'd be like blowing up St. Peter's Basilica, blowing it up down to rubble. That's what they have done to the Catholic Church.
Point 4, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who frequent a Mass, even traditional, which is offered under the auspices of or with the approval of the Novus Ordo hierarchy, nor to those who frequent the traditional Mass in which members of the Novus Ordo hierarchy are mentioned in the Te Igitur prayers of the canon of the Mass, nor to those who recognize the Novus Ordo hierarchy as having the power to teach, rule, and sanctify the Catholic Church. Well, there's a couple different issues going on there, Your Excellency.
Yes, it's all related to what we've said, though. Yes.
Number 5, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who obstinately hold that the position of recognizing the Novus Ordo hierarchy as having the power to teach, rule, and sanctify the Catholic Church has theological probability and may be legitimately held.
Yes, and you have to make a decision about the Pope. Either he is or he isn't. And it is, if you're back and forth on it and you're not sure and etc., you're not ready for sacraments yet.
And again, what happens when you have those conversations with people generally?
It depends. Some of them understand that you can't have Catholicism without the Pope. In other words, you can't remove him from the puzzle. We don't need that piece.
It's almost as if he's the head of the church.
Yeah, there's to say, well, I'm not sure. Well, you have to. You cannot act according to moral theology in a doubtful conscience. And this is if you're just in doubt about him, you must resolve your doubt and say, I'm going this way or I'm going that way about it. Because your salvation depends on your submission to him. If he's the true Pope, you must be submitted to him and you must obey him. If he is a false Pope, you must denounce him. He is one or the other. And in the practical order, you must resolve it.
Point 6, the clergy of the Institute shall not administer any sacraments to those who are gravely immodest in their dress or who in any other way are guilty of grave public sin.
That's just the general discipline of the church.
Have you run into occasions of this?
Oh, plenty of times. Weddings are the big offenders. Funerals too.
And how do faithful take to correction in this matter?
Usually badly. They're people that are not usually our parishioners. They're funeral weddings. Many just walk away, or they laugh at you, or they say nasty things to you. In many cases, the only dress that a woman owns now is a cocktail dress, which is worse than if she came in pants. We don't have to describe it. It's tight and scanty and everything, but that's her dress. You see, and no, it's a very common problem. And so I always stand out in front of the church for both funerals and weddings, and I tell people. Now we do offer them a graduation gown to cover, coverall kind of thing, and some people take it and some don't. But the glory of God is more important than any of that.
Well, I just think in the natural. I mean, this is less so the case these days. But even in the natural order, if you go to a nice restaurant, they would have jackets around for men who had.
Yes, but it's the house of God. It's not the house of advertising your body.
Point 7, in all cases of refusal of the sacraments, except in those involving grave public sin, warning should be given to those to whom sacraments shall be denied in a discreet and reasonable manner, and should be given the opportunity to repent of their sins or to remove the impediments to receiving the sacraments. So there wouldn't be an announcement from the pulpit, that lady in the red dress
No.
on the epistle side, don't come up for communion.
No, and we're not going to interrogate you at the communion rail or anything like that. Now, if you show up piously at the communion rail, you'll get communion. But if we fear that there is some impediment or some problem, we'll take you aside in the sacristy and just explain those things to you nicely. That's all.
It's up to them as to what they do with that
Yes,
correction.
and the ball is in their court, as they say.
And our last point for today, point 8, those who are returning from the Novus Ordo to the beliefs and practices of Roman Catholicism may not receive sacraments until 1. They manifest their resolve to utterly repudiate Vatican II and its reforms. 2. It is determined that they are sufficiently instructed in the Catholic faith. And 3. Are free from any impediments to receiving the sacraments, particularly invalid marriages and cohabitation or any other public sin.
Yeah, that just makes perfect sense. I mean, you have to conform to all of those things.
Well, as always, Your Excellency, thank you for your time. If you liked what the bishop had to say, please hit like, subscribe, share this with other people, and you can always leave a super thanks or go to rcinstitute.org and donate to the Institute. We'll continue our discussion next time by talking about the preaching section of the Pastoral Directory.